Jersey has been a prominent player in delivering fund services since the 1960s. In the past 5 years, private equity fundraising in the Channel Islands has amounted to an estimated €234 billion.
The funds industry in Jersey has been around for over 40 years. We've seen the landscape evolve massively from a very retail focus in the 70s and the 80s to what is now the core, which is alternative asset managers, including private equity, real estate and hedge funds. We've seen that the whole funds industry has taken a battering over the last 2 years, but particularly in Jersey, we've found that the asset levels, both those under administration and management, have remained resilient and that service levels haven't dropped.
Funds have been regulated in Jersey since the early 1980s. In 1988, specific legislation was introduced, the Collective Investment Funds Jersey Law. That was to facilitate the creation of funds and their regulation. Since then, things have moved on considerably. We now have funds for very retail investors, as well as those for sophisticated investors, including hedge funds and private equity funds.
Jersey offers a wide range of fund opportunities in a well-run, progressive and sophisticated environment. The emphasis today has shifted towards funds for institutional, specialist and expert investors.
The most widely used fund structures in Jersey are the expert funds. They're aimed exclusively at expert or sophisticated investors. We provide a fast-track authorisation process. We authorise the funds within 72 hours.
We are able to provide everything from the setup and the structuring advice at the beginning of the life of the fund right the way to the end of the life of the fund. We have all of the major offshore law firms in the world represented who are able to provide that advice on setting up the fund in the first place, obtaining all the regulatory permits. And then we have all the service providers that are needed over the life of the fund for the management, administration, proper corporate governance of the fund, as well as making sure that investor reporting is done properly and appropriately and investor interests are protected.
In today's competitive global marketplace, Jersey's cutting-edge legislation and first-class regulation make it an attractive place to set up funds.
We are actually competing against a global playing field. And so what we have to display is obviously that we're running a very tight operation, that it is passing all the sort of due diligence procedures that people are coming to investigate us. We are actually sort of regulated here, but also we do touch base with a number of other regulators around the world. And so we do have to run here on an international standard.
Jersey offers a fast and responsive regulatory regime. We are always approachable and willing to listen to applications prior to their being made. We are prepared to look at applications on a case-by-case basis, and we believe we are flexible. However, we do maintain high regulatory standards.
The regulator here is always prepared to listen, and so we have exceptional good two-way communication with them. More so on technical issues with regard to our industry, where some of the probably mainstream legislation is not clear and perhaps can sometimes be thought to be quite grey.
Clearly they have a role to make sure we're in line with international standards, but also to ensure that the regulation is appropriate for the types of funds that we are managing and administering.
One of the key benefits here is that as a fund manager we actually touch point with a lot of other regulators throughout the world. In fact, here we're also regulated in the US by the CFTC. We have a subsidiary company in Hong Kong that's regulated there. We have a few touch points with the Australian regulator. And in fact, one of our connected companies has FSA regulation in the UK. Obviously, we need a regulator that has a lot of two-way communication flow with those regulators. Obviously, the credibility of our main regulator, the GFSC, holds us in very good standard in those geographical locations.
Formed in 1984, the Jersey Funds Association enables the funds industry to maintain an effective dialogue and consultation with the government and regulatory authorities. There are 4 major roles: marketing, legal and technical, products and strategy, and education.
The role of the marketing is really just that, so making sure that the benefits of using Jersey and the benefits of the funds industry are understood both internally and outside of the island. The role of the legal and technical subcommittee is to ensure that regulation and tax that impacts the funds industry is not only appropriate but in line with international standards. The role of the Products and Strategy Subcommittee is to ensure that as a funds industry we have the right products and the right direction for the strategic direction for the industry, particularly with what the demand is in the financial centres and the major gatekeepers introducing business to the island. And finally, the Education Subcommittee is just that, making sure that our members are regularly updated with developments in accountancy, legal, tax, market related topics that affect our industry. Externally, we work in conjunction with JerseyFinance Limited to ensure that the gatekeepers in the major financial centres, including London and other cities, fully understand what it is that we have to offer and that we fully understand what it is that the market is demanding in the funds industry.
Everyone involved has a role to play in encouraging growth in the sector.
We are looking for directors and promoters with a proven track record, with sufficient stature and the ability to manage and run a fund properly.
The way that we attract fund managers to the island is we keep regular and open dialogue with those managers that we tend to work with, private equity, hedge funds and real estate managers, to ensure that they fully understand the tax, the regulatory and lifestyle benefits of living in Jersey. There are a number of managers who have relocated, so often their story is a good one to tell. But in many cases, apart from the tax and regulatory, Jersey does offer a number of lifestyle advantages. Good education system, a stable and political and economic environment, good links with London, the rest of the UK and Europe. I think there are over 40 flights a day. And so it does provide really the perfect balance for someone looking to locate their fund or their fund management company.
Generally, the safeguards are that we have examined the fund, its promoters and its directors. We carry out checks on the directors and the promoters with a view to ensuring they are fit and proper. We check such as their CVs, their qualifications, and that they have no issues with regulators outside the island.
The quality of life in Jersey is often talked about, but there are many reasons why fund managers would consider setting up here.
For us, obviously, moving out of central London, we actually sort of got rid of the nightmare commute that we all experience in London, whether it be, travelling on the tube or even on British Rail. But Jersey is actually perfectly placed here in terms of the trading cycle. We can wake up early in the morning and see Tokyo out all the way through the main European trading sessions. And then, in fact, before we go to bed at night, we're actually seeing the US close. So it's perfectly poised. And this is also one of the key decision processes that we went through, of actually being in the most strategic geographical time zone.
With the current levels of investment and Jersey's global standing stronger than ever, the sector is well placed to grow.
I believe there are good prospects for Jersey as a funds jurisdiction. It's grown considerably since the 1980s. We have a progressive and well-run funds industry. I believe we have a responsive and proactive regulatory system. And I believe the future looks good.
The talk in the city is that fund managers are back on the road looking to raise money, that funds are being raised. And so I am optimistic that 2011 we will start to see steady growth again, perhaps not the stellar growth of 2005 to 2007, but funds will be raised and hopefully it'll be a good year.